set one printer up to do those inks.
If you guys want, how many of you guys are doing black and white? Is it everybody?
There's like, and then who else is there? Oh, there's Lindley.
Lucas probably does some black and white.
Yeah, Lindley, Lucas.
And also Jess.
Jess. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at least. Out of 12, so like probably 50%.
What we can do is, let's get through this part. What I would like to do is this, because this will take us probably about another 10 or 15 minutes to do, which puts us just a little bit after 3. That's everything as far as the hardware in goes that you guys need. What I would like to do then is start to look at your files and talk about the way I would approach color correcting, changing that stuff. So actually the files that you guys are working on, and do this so everybody can sort of see that, and we'll see how far that gets us. There's not that many of you, so we should be able to get through that part pretty quick and to have that conversation. And then if anybody wants to, we can do a number of things. We can schedule black and white to actually be another day and really get into it. Or we can go very briefly over something, whatever. I mean, we can make that call. Let's see where we land, okay? Yeah, I'm not going, I really shouldn't be going past 4, but so anyway, like I say, it's sounding like maybe this is another day to get together. I think they're planning on that anyway. Okay, so this thing has been spotted. It does find it now. So again, it just took a restart here. Again, let me just make sure that this is recording really quick. Check, yeah, okay. So this is where we are right here. So there's a number of things that you've got to set up first in this. And it's these guys right here, and what I'm going to suggest that you do is pick this dual scan, and what that really means is that what's going to happen is that this, this reader right here is going to go across, is going to read all of those color patches going left to right. If I did just a single pass scan, it would only go left to right. I would come down and do right to, I would just go back and forth between the whole thing. Instead, what it'll do is, if I say that I want this to be dual scan, then what it'll do is it will actually go back and forth across the same row twice. And it makes for a more exact measurement, which is what we actually want to do. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. Actually, I'm going to move this up to here. So I'm going to hand you, because it's going to be easier to see this. I'm going to give you this guy. And I'm going to set this up over here. So if I can get you guys all to come up over here to take a look at this, we need to look at the mechanics of how this whole thing gets put together. And then I'll actually show you how this whole thing works. So we've got enough light over here for you guys to see this, right? Okay, so here's the trick. So the first thing that's going to come up here is it's going to say, you need to calibrate this. So just like we have calibrated everything, our sensor, our monitor, our everything, you've got to calibrate the calibrator, right? And so to do that, if you take a look at this cradle, there's a cover on this cradle. If you pull it back, it shows this little white target. This little white target is the calibration target, and that's what's been written right here. So it's going to say, put this thing on here and then activate it. To activate this, if you take a look at this, there's an indent on this side and there's an indent on this side. It's designed for you to squeeze with your thumb and forefinger. If you pinch it, it actually is a switch that activates it. That's how you do the measurement part of it. You can also, once you lay this guy down, you can click on this little calibrate button right here. It doesn't matter, it does the same thing. But I'm just going to pinch this guy, and you'll see that it'll actually say, it's going to go through this. You'll see the little wheel spinning. And then it's going to say, line this whole thing up. And what it'll say is it tells you about exactly how to set this up. To go ahead and clip this up here like this, to have it set in the middle as far as that part goes, to pick page 1 of 1, to position this, and then this is what it's going to say to do. This slide right here has got a series of teeth that fit in the back. Let me turn on one other light, guys, just so we need to see this a little bit better. Also, at this point, you want to crank your speaker volume all the way up to make it as loud as it can, because we need to hear an audible from that. But you'll see on this slide, there's 2 little prongs that point up in here on this back foot right here, those two little prongs go right inside these two grooves right here. So you'll find this goes in, and it actually will sit in, and then this thing will slide back and forth on this. Then you take this clear slider right here and you bring this up so that it is just behind the first of the line. So you set this up like this.
Wait, how do you move this up?
It just slides.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't do it.
Yeah, it just caught on that. So I just lifted up, because you can lift it a whole up. You could just set it down on this guy. It'll be fine. So does this make sense what's going on? So it's going to measure this top row, right? And so, anyway, it says to go ahead and set this up. So I'm on my screen and I'm saying, okay, it's set up, it's ready to go right now. And I'm going to click OK. Actually, I take that back. I'm going to click not recalibrate. I just want to start the fucking measurement. So, sorry, it's going to ask me to recalibrate again. Okay, now we're ready to go. So again, yeah, you can just pick this whole thing up and just set it down here like that. Don't abuse your targets too much, though, because if you ding them, it'll cause problems. So this is now set in, and you can see that what it's actually, and the reason this thing needs to be centered is that with this target all the way over, it's actually centered this guy over the first of those patches right now. If this target was all the way to the right, or I'm sorry, all the way to the left or to the right, this would never be able to reach it and be able to measure it. That's why these things have to stay centered like this, right? So it's going to say right here, measure row number 1 on top of page 1. You can see if I grab my other target really quickly, because I'm going to need it in just a second. You can see that the rows are numbered. So if you get lost or you get an error message or something, it'll say you need to remeasure row number 16. And you just go to row number 16 and you measure it. So it's really, this is really, the software itself is pretty hard to screw up. So this is what I mean. So there's a couple of possible mistakes that you can make doing this, but I'm going to show you how this works. The first mistake that you can actually make is that you don't give this enough time to charge. That's why I said turn up the volume on your computer. So what I'm going to do is I'm ready to measure row number 1. It's actually visible to me right now. I'm going to pinch this thing right now, but then you need to wait to hear an audible beep, which is your indication that this is ready to go. If we go too soon, you're going to get an error message. So this is what it sounds like. Hear that? Boom. That's telling me it's now ready. And then you simply drag this guy across and let go. If it worked, you will get this little blue light will actually come up, and it'll say that the forward scan is complete. Please scan the row in the opposite direction. Again, we said we wanted dual scan going in both directions. So again, click, wait for the audible, and pull back and let go. If you get the double green light, that means this is successful, and you'll see here that that whole slider has come down to row number 2 right now, and it's saying measure row number 2. So I'm going to come down to row number 2 and do it again. Wait for the audible, come across, let go. It's working. Click, wait for the audible, pull back. Both of them come down to the next row. So the fuck-ups. This, I'm not going to wait for the audible. Big red lights come up. It comes up here and it says, the scan was started before the lamp was ready. Please scan again. Wait 2 seconds. What it tells you, it admonishes you. It sends an email to your mother telling you that you've been naughty and that you really can't believe they're spending this kind of money on your education. The next thing you can do is you can do this too fast. Don't be too impatient. This is what happens when that happens. Big errors that come up saying, you went too fast, don't do that again, slow it down, take your time. And where am I right now? Forward scan's complete, go in the other direction. So I'm going to blast through this pretty quick. And again, this is a medium-sized target, so you can see how long this is ultimately going to take me. So I keep telling people this. Nobody seems to listen or care. To have this done professionally usually costs about $150. You can actually send, there's companies that do this. They will send you a file to print out. You mail the file back to them. They build your profile doing exactly this, using exactly this piece of software, and they charge you $150 to do it. I can do a major target this size in 10 minutes. That means I can do 6 of those in an hour. What's 6 times 150? It's $900. Who in this room is making $900 an hour? Wouldn't you like to? Oh yeah, you could go into the custom profiling business and use the studio's gear to do it and the school's gear to do it.
That's a good idea.
Why aren't you doing it?
All right, so I've got an error message now. It says, please rescan row number 12. That was like perfect reply to that, right? Why aren't you doing it? Ding, 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 ding. Error, warning. Now, I have a photo business, and I actually teach 4 classes here. I know. All right, so this gets through this whole thing, and it says measuring row 15 on page number 2. So again, page number 2, right here, 2 of 2. So I'm going to take this guy off. I'm going to pull this off. I'm going to yank that out. Put this in.
And these are both for that same central camera paper.
Exactly. So typically what they'll say to you, just so that you know the rest of this, again, the cleat goes into the feet. It's already set up on that top row. And again, now I can simply continue. Oh, another mistake. This is one I'll show you. I'm not going to do row 15. I'm going to pick a completely different row down here. And I'm going to click and drag it across this guy. And you'll see that you're going to get another error message that says forward scan. Actually, it said my forward scan was complete. And that should be wrong.
Is this profile for the P8000?
Yes.
Can you send it to me?
Yeah,
Yes, I can. So anyway, in my case, I think that's a mistake. So I'm going to click back up here because I know that that's a mistake. Apparently, it's close enough that it didn't give me an error on that, but it should have given me an error on that. Every time I've done this before, it's actually given me an error. However, you can use your mouse to actually go back up and remeasure the correct row, row number 15. So I'm going to go back up to the top to remeasure the correct row now. So it's not like we have to start all over.
No, it's just like simply because the printers are all different, and like different colors, all different. And so, this is just a measure. It's like what he was doing on the screen. You know how it flashed all the different colors and it like scanned it.
But isn't that specific to your camera / to your monitor or no?
No, no, no.
Or
This is
the
just like
printer?
whatever the printer is outputting.
Yes, can I have this? So this is what you choose in your printer.
It's also it's to match the paper too.
Right, yeah, but not your camera monitor.
Nah, no.
Those are all.
That makes me feel better because typically when I demo this, I only do scan in one direction. But that makes me happy that I've done this in both because that means this will be a valid profile and I can give it to all of you from today.
Nice, thank you.
Again, error message on that, and it's telling me incomplete, rescan row 25 and do it slower. So it's this top row up here, 25. And then go to 26, right? Yep. So then it says the measurement is successfully completed, so you guys can go ahead and have a seat. We'll finish up the last part of this, and then this part's done. We can start working on your files. So again, it's going to say to me right here, The measurement successfully completed. Click Save to keep your profile measurement for further use. Click Next to continue to the next step. So I'm going to say OK to that, and I do want to actually save this guy. So it's not showing me save here, but you need to know about this part right here, and it's this. In this drop-down menu here, we have two options here. We've actually got an M0, you've got an M1 and an M2. What these stand for are measurements 1, 2, and 3. So how many of you guys know about optical brighteners? Okay, so in an effort to make white paper whiter, because again, white, the piece of paper is as bright as this thing can get. So in an effort to make paper brighter, they put in these, what they're called optical brighteners. And basically what they are is they are, you know, you guys have all seen fluorescent posters, right?
Yeah.
Fluorescent colors. Why do they glow? Well, the reason they glow is, if you think about you guys all know about Roy G. Biv, right? Red, orange, green, yellow, blue, indigo, violet, right? The visible spectrum, right? Right outside of the visible spectrum is UV light. You can't see UV light. But what ultraviolet dyes do is they take that ultraviolet light that you cannot see and they bend the light wave and it pulls it into the visible spectrum, which creates more energy than should really be there. And you see it as that really intense fluorescent glow. So that's why black light posters glow. That's why, you know, that's why those things glow, is that there's energy there that shouldn't be there. Does that sort of make sense? Oh, this gets worse. How many people in here use, does any of you guys use like umbrellas or any of that kind of stuff when you do lighting? Any sort of softeners, any of that kind of stuff? Okay, you know I always say whisk. I blame whisk on this all the time. You know there's the laundry detergent that is a blue liquid. Whisk is one of them, but pretty much everybody makes these blue liquid ones. The blue in that liquid is a UV dye, and the reason they put it in there is it dyes your clothes with one of these UV brighteners, and then your clothes, your white shirt, emits more light than it should, and you see it as being brighter. Oh, I use Whisk laundry detergent. My shit's brighter. The problem with that is that if you wash your umbrella that you're using to light with, you actually have dyed your photo gear with a UV dye, and it will actually take UV light, bend it, and put it in the visible spectrum, and you will end up with energy. You end up with what they call cross-curving. You will end up, imagine a situation where, what's the complementary color of green? Magenta. Those two balance one another out, right? Yeah. So if you've got too much magenta, you add green. If you've got too much green, you add magenta. And when you get it right, they balance one another out, right? Yeah. But what happens when you've got too much of both? You have too much magenta and too much green. And the reason this happens is because you've taken light that should not be there and you have brought it into the visible spectrum, and you end up with it. You can't color balance. That's what they call cross-curving. It's a horrible thing. And for you who shoot film, it's especially important to you guys because it happens to you guys all the time. But at any rate, so my point being is that don't wash your photo gear in the fucking laundry detergent that's a blue liquid. Do not do Whisk. Do not. Tide makes one that's the same thing. It's a blue liquid. There's ones that do laundry detergent that are powder, but they have little blue specks in them. All of those are UV dyes, and they're all designed to dye your shit to make it brighter, but it wreaks havoc on photo gear, makes it unusable.
Why are you washing your umbrellas?
Oh my God, you should see what I do to my photo equipment. I throw shit on the ground all the time.
Like just a basic, like let's say like that you bounce through, bounce out, or like you shoot
Right,
into.
right.
It's an umbrella like attached to metal.
Yeah, right. And when you're setting it up, you don't have that white thing sitting on the ground.
I mean, I have it in case or in a bag.
No, all I'm saying is that my shit gets beat to death.
So then when you like hand wash it or something?
Oh, no. You just get a white powdered laundry detergent that has no blue specks in it, and you'll be fine.
But like how physically are you washing it? Like you can't.
Oh, of course I do. Throw it in the laundry. It should totally throw it in the washing machine.
It's an umbrella attached to like.
You can pull all those little things off. So at any rate, we're digressing. I don't want to do that part. So it's not just on an umbrella. It's in this paper as well. So The measurement that we just did will allow you to make profiles for paper that's got a UV brightener in it or not, and that's what this drop down is right here. So in this drop down menu right here, you can see that you want to include the UV in this MO. In this M1, this would be set up for a piece of paper that was set for a color temperature of D50. We're not using that. We're using D65. So you would never build this profile right here. But if you had an old school unbrightened piece of paper, so typically this would be things like canvas. This would be things that don't have optical brighteners in here. You would actually set your profile up here not to deal with the UV brightener. But I can promise you this thing has got a UV brightener in it. So we are going to simply set it up. You can build multiple ones of these at this point. But again, I'm going to do the first of the versions up here because this has a UV brightener in it. And then I'm going to say OK to this. I'm going to click on Next. It's going to say, do you want to set your profile for a specific illuminant? You do not need to worry about this. Leave it at its default. Even though this says D50, ignore this page and go to the next one. And it's going to say, save your profile, and it's going to give you this absolutely worthless name right here, Chart 800 Patches. That doesn't mean a thing. What I'm going to do is call this a P800. I'm using that information that's right up there, _ central. Luster. Again, I'm abbreviating stuff here because they only let you make this so long, but this is the profile that I'm going to give you guys, so just remember that that's what's going on here. The next one down is my media type. So again, it was a Ultra Premium Presentation Matte _ the ink type, it is a K3. Again, that's just telling you it's Epson ink. The next one is Verser, the person who made it, so that'll also help keep it straight for you. And then again, I'm not sure it's going to let me because this has a finite number of letters on space on this. So I'm going to try 20190913, and it looks like it's going to let me get that completely in there. Say what? Oh, you're right. Thank you so much. So does this make sense? Now this is something that means something to me. The profile name tells me everything that I need to be doing with this guy. Make sense on that part? The other thing is that if you knew you were always using a K3 ink set that was always going to be Epson, you could change this to actually do the black ink setting. So in our case, it was the glossy ink, so it would be a PK as opposed to an MK. Because that was what, again, that was in the media setting, what we did this guy with. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So only when you're using this paper from Central Camera, so you can use this profile.
That's the only, on this printer. Only this printer.
On that printer.
With only that media setting. Make sense? Are we good on this part?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. I will go capture it for you guys. But I want to show you really quickly how we use it, and then we're done with everything that I really wanted to get to you guys today. We will start to look at your files and talk about color correction and that sort of thing on here. Are there questions about this so far? I know that this is a lot. Are you guys hanging in here?
Yeah.
Are we at some point thinking, oh, fuck, I'm just so lost in all of this? So I will say this. You have my email. If you're lost and you're struggling, whatever, I keep office hours in that space. My office is right next door from 10 to noon on Mondays and Tuesdays both. You're welcome to come in. So it says the profile was successfully created, and I'm going to say OK to that. And then it'll give me a whole series of things that I can actually view this profile with and all that kind of stuff. I don't need to do any of that. I'm simply going to quit this process now. And I'm going to show you how I would use this both in Lightroom and in Photoshop both. Does that sort of make sense? It's the final step that we need to take in all of this. So I'm going to go back to the file that we have been using all along. You have got a series of extremely explicit PDFs about how to go through this printing process for a P800. The P8000 is slightly different. For all practical purposes, the instructions for the P800 will work fine for the P8000. There may be one or two things that are a little bit off, but I'll show you what those PDFs are. Those, again, were in the download that you guys got from me. I just want to make sure you're feeling good about that part, because if you ever get lost in this process, it will work you through step by step for doing it on out of Lightroom, and also step by step coming out of Photoshop. It also will talk about the advanced black and white settings for both of those on Epson printers, which would be, when we start talking about black and white, one of the places that I would show you. Are any of you guys doing advanced black and white Epson printing? It'll change your life. It's a completely different approach than what I'm going to show you right now. It abandons all of this for black and white. I'll show it to you really quickly if we get to, I want to look at your files really quickly though. So let me just get that file open really fast again, just so I've got something to try to print out. So again, in my drop-down menu here, I'm going to go to the custom profile that we built for this guy. It's sitting right down here at the bottom, and say OK to that part. I'm going to collapse this. I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to color balance on this guy right here. That has now been color neutralized. I'm going to drop a point on that shadow part that I know I want to actually be open. It's in the low 20s right here. So again, I'm going to pop my shadows and my blacks both open a little bit. That gets me sort of that mid-20 area, the area that we said we all thought that this should be, whatever. And then I'm going to open this as a smart object. If you don't know what a smart object is, it's a little beyond where we're at right now. We should at some point, though, get together and have this conversation. But at any rate, let's say now I'm simply ready to print this guy out.
What did you do after you hit the shadow thing?
I just opened it. Yep.
Or open image?
I'm sorry? No, I actually opened this as a smart object. Again, if you don't know what a smart object is, that's what this little thing is right here. We can't go through every single thing in this class. This is just the method that I work in, because what this allows me to do, if I double click on this, I go right back into Camera Raw, and I can continue to do adjustments here. It's a copy of my raw data, which is really critical if you're actually doing this kind of work. So nonetheless, again, it's my guess, and you guys are really going to be the vote on this. It's you guys saying to Kelly, hey, we went down the road, we want to keep this up, because there is a whole world out here that you guys need to know about. But again, we can't do everything in a single day. But we've gotten a lot here. Again, at this stage of the game, you are looking at honest image right now. What I'm looking at right now, this is real. So if I look at this and say, well, I don't think the color's right on this, whatever, I can actually make my adjustments on my screen and truly believe them. And I go to print this out, and what I print out should look a large part like my screen. Make sense? Yeah. All right, so to finally finish this process here, let's say everything is done. I've done all the retouching I want to do, blah, 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 blah. Anything else I've wanted to do, I'm going to come up to the File menu, and I'm going to come down to Print for this guy right here. And you can see it's over. I haven't resized it. It's oversized, but that part doesn't really matter to me. Again, I'm going to change this to the printer that I was actually working on. So that's the P800 series. I'm then going to click on my, and this is a weird thing. You would think that they would build this UI that starts at the top and works your way down. You would be wrong. You need to come down to this color handling right here and change this before you can change the printer settings. What you set here changes options in this. So if you go to this first and then come down and fix this, it redoes things that you set up here, which will screw you up. So you come down to here and you change this from Printer Managing Color to Photoshop Manages the Color, and then up to Printer Settings. And in Printer Settings, again, we are going to make this US letter, which was what I would be printing on here, or you change it to whatever it is. But again, in this drop-down menu here, go from Layout down to Printer Settings, And in printer settings, we need to set this up exactly the way our profile was designed. So you can see by default, it goes to this premium photo paper glossy. That's not what we used. What we used was this ultra premium photo paper luster. This was the one that we actually used on this guy. Does that make sense? So it also tells me that because I said when I named that profile, I said ultra premium presentation matte. It's not. It's this one right here. So I'm going to fix that before I give it to you guys. It was photo black ink, and I am good to go. So I can simply hit save on this. And then in this drop-down menu, the printer profile, you need to pick the one that we just made. So again, in my drop-down menu right here, I get all the profiles that are possible for me. So mine was P8000. This is the one that I just built.
I'm a bit confused.
Okay.
You said that when you make a profile, you only use on that specific printer, like printer number 1.
Yes.
You cannot use it on printer number 6.
Exactly.
But when you make this profile, I don't see a printer number 1.
Because I'm not hooked up to the printer. I would simply go to that printer and do this on that printer. I don't have any printer connected.
I'm totally lost.
Hold that thought,
Okay.
and we'll figure it out.
Okay.
All right. So for the rest of you, does this make sense where I'm at right now? So I'm picking the profile that I just built for this. It's sitting right here, the central luster, ultra premium presentation matte. Again, that's not a matte. That will be luster. I'll change that L. But the PK ink, this is today's date, so I'm picking this guy. Does that make sense? And then in terms of normal printing, I'm going to leave this. Rendering intense, for the most part, there are only 2 options that you guys have. There is perceptual or relative colorimetric. Those are the only 2. Without going deep into this, I'm merely going to tell you, if you have an image that's got a lot of saturated color in it, pick perceptual. If you have one that doesn't have a lot of saturated color, go with relative colorimetric. In this one, it probably has enough saturation in that sweater that I'm going to pick perceptual. And then black point compensation, you want this always turned on, and simply hit print. And if I was connected to printer number 1, this would be perfect. If I was connected to a different kind of printer or printer number 2, this would not work anywhere near as well.
Oh, so the profile you're giving us would not work.
This profile that I'm giving you is a good general, it's as good as any can profile for any of the 800s that are in the photo lab.
Oh, okay. So
But if you want to be really, really, really anal about this, you would rebuild this profiler for just one of those printers.
Oh, and connect this thing?
Exactly.
Oh, what are you connecting to now?
My computer.
Oh, so you're just building a general.
Yeah, so this I don't need anymore. This is not even connected
so
anymore.
You're just building a general profile
Yes.
for this paper.
For this paper
And
on those
for-
P800s in the digital lab.
Oh, okay. So because on the 1.1,
Mm-hmm.
you just set up the printer as your profile.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. So this is more general.
It's more general, but it'll work way better than a can profile.
Oh, I see.
Well, actually, there are no profiles. Central doesn't release any profiles for this stuff. You can't get one of these. You've got to make it.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Does this make sense, everyone?
Wait. I usually print on the absolute symmetric. Is that bad?
Oh, that's horrible.
It is
Horrible. No, 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 no. This absolute colorimetric? No, this is designed for graphic artists who only care about Coca-Cola red being Coca-Cola red. This saturates all of your colors, no matter what they are. It saturates everything.
I see.
No, this is no, do not use this.
Okay.
No, your only 2 options, perceptual or relative colorimetric. Yeah.
For what again?
I'm sorry?
What were the differences? Perceptual is you have a lot of.
Perceptual is if you've got really highly saturated color, you want to use perceptual. If you don't have highly saturated colors, relative colorimetric is a better version for you. Again, this is a whole conversation that we can have, but this is much deeper color theory, and I feel like we've got a half hour left, and I want to look at some of your all stuff to talk about color correction. Yes?
So should I be able to see all the things in print settings even if I don't have the dragger in there? Because if I go to Photoshop Manager's color and then I hit print settings, I have a very small print.
It all has to do with the printer that you've picked up here at the top.
So if there's nothing in there,
If there's nothing in there, you've got nothing to select, because that's all based on those printers. Are we good on this part?
Wait, what's the other one? Relative?
So your only two options are perceptual or relative colorimetric. Those are the only two you can use. And also make sure that this black point compensation is on, or your prints will come out really flat.
Okay.
And then simply hit print. Now I can't hit print because I'm not connected to a printer, but that would be it.
Perfect.
Are we questions about that? Are we okay on this? So to go through this whole process, again, I'm going to hit cancel out of here just to show you this really fast. What I have given you guys really quickly to just walk you through all of this. You can take a look at it for yourself, but I'll show it to you. If we look in the, so this was what I gave you, this graduate printing workshop. If you go down to, oh, that's not included in this one. I added it to you. It's the thing for printing. It was the second file for you guys, a folder for you guys to copy over. It's this one right here that says printing. Inside of this, there's a set for Canon and there's a set for Epson that are actually in here. If you take a look at the Epson right here, this is broken down into various phases of this. You want to select this Epson Inkjet Printing Complete. If you do that, this is what you'll get. It starts off with doing nozzle check. This will work you through all of nozzle check. If you have problems, it'll show you what they are. It'll show you what they look like and how to fix them. Then if you actually want to print out of Photoshop, it will walk you through all of this, how to print in Photoshop. This is exactly what we just looked at. If you want to do it from Lightroom, this is actually, I take it back, this is still printing from Photoshop. Then this goes down to printing from Lightroom. This will walk you through step by step for everything that you need to do in Lightroom to do this exact same thing with these same profiles. Are we good on this part? And then again, this walks you through every single option that you'll have in the Epson driver. There is the exact, if you end up with problems on here like roller marks, that's what these little things are right here, or scratching or bleeding, this is all shows you how to deal with all of that part. That's for the Epson one. If you go to the Canon one here, this will walk you through the exact same steps on a Canon. Look at this Canon Inkjet Printing Complete. This is everything you need to know from nozzle checks to printing in Photoshop and printing in Lightroom. This will walk you through all, and it goes into how to deal with the same problems that you run into. Are we good on this part? Okay, because that way, if we don't have to go through this again in Lightroom, we've got time to actually look at some of your all's files. So why don't we do that part? Are you guys good on that? So who actually brought files that you would like to look at and talk about color correction, talk about anything? Anybody? Say what? Any pictures. You got it, guys? Okay, so can you get to our server again? Can you just drop those on the server? Because I would like to put them up here on the screen and see what it is you guys have done with it and talk about the way I would actually go after this. Do you feel like that's a good way to go? I don't know what you guys want to, else you guys want to do, but I think that this would probably be the most helpful part. Is that true? Is there something else that you guys wanted to get to today that you haven't feel like we haven't gotten to?
No, can you tell me why when you export out of Lightroom it's 240 ppi when obviously everyone wants 300?
The thing is that when you're actually exporting out of Lightroom, that part doesn't matter because it's going to change the size of the image. So the resolution as you export out doesn't make really any difference at all.
But then it shows up to people and they're like, this isn't like, you know, this isn't blah blah blah, and they want it higher.
Again, here, this is the issue, and I'll show you what this will sort of answer that same question. I'm going to go back into Camera Raw right here, and you can see it's the same setup that's actually in here. If I take a look at this setup right here, you can actually see, I'll change my resolution here. Instead of this 240, that's not where I can actually put this guy in. So 240. No, I'm going to leave it at 300, and I'll show you the first one. I'm going to cancel out of this first to begin with. And actually, if you take a look at this down here, if this is the image that's open, and this is the full res image. Okay, I haven't done anything to this guy. If you come up to your image menu and you come down to image size, you'll actually see, if I do this and show you the pixel count that I've got, this is 3,744 pixels by 5,616 pixels wide. At 300 ppi. That's basically what's going on in here. If I change this without resampling it, I can actually change this now to, let's say, 240 and say OK to that. and then go back and look at it again, you can actually see again, if I actually go take this back to looking at it as a pixel count, the pixel count is identical. So it doesn't matter what you are bringing the pixels and the resolution into Photoshop as long as the pixel dimensions remain unchanged. And that's what you're doing. Does that make sense? Yeah. So the 240 thing doesn't really matter. Are you talking about the print part in Lightroom or exporting?
I'm talking about exporting.
Okay, so in either one of those, so if I go into Lightroom, we'll just look at one. Raw file. So just throw it on that server into the Engelhard folder and we can look at it and we can open it up. Okay, so I've got this file in my library. I'm selecting it. I'm coming up to File, down to Export. And is this what you're talking about right in here?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so again, I wouldn't export this, but if I wanted to do this as a JPEG, I could actually do that part. But you're looking at this count right here, right? Yeah. The thing that actually changes in all of this, if I unclick this resize image, none of this matters. It's going to export a JPEG that's exactly that same size. And to show that to you, we'll go ahead and export this file. And now I wish I knew where I was exporting it to. So let me see where I actually just sent that guy. So that's going, oh God, no, I don't want to put it there. I'm going to actually change it to my TOS folder. It'll be much easier to find. So again, down here, I'm unchecking that resize my image part, and I'm going to go ahead and export it as a JPEG. And now if I go into my TOS folder and look at it, and it's sitting right here. I'm going to open this up into Photoshop. Cancel. I'm opening this up in Photoshop. This is now the JPEG right here. Right? If I look at the image size of this, it's still, if I look at the pixel count, it's still that 3,744 by 5,616. The number of pixels is unchanged. The resolution doesn't matter. The resolution is simply telling them how big you want the pixels to be, but it doesn't change the count.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter.
That's what I think. But you always get people, like clients that are like, hey, we need this at blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's fine. Like,
Yeah.
It's always fine.
Yeah. Okay, so can we take a look at some of your old stuff? So again, up to the Go menu, down to Connect to Server, and if you saved that AFP by clicking on that little plus, it should be right there under your favorites. If you didn't, this is what you have to type in, AFP://172.20.208.221. We good on that part?
Yes, next part.
Okay. And did you connect?
No, it's not. It's asking me to.
It has it like blocked out because you're already connected, I think. So you have to like go over to like locations.
Oh yeah, if you're already connected, back in your Finder, don't ask me who named this, but back in your Finder, you're looking for a server called, I'm not connected, let me connect to mine again. It's called something like Tiki or Tiki or something like that, hang on. It's sitting right over here. It's this thing right here called TIKAL. Do you see that? No. I've just opened a window in Finder.
My shares aren't showing right now. Like I haven't adopted it. And I can't remember to check that on.
I'll show you really quick. It's simple. So come up to your Finder Preferences. And in the sidebar, you want to click on Show Servers. So scroll. No, because it's sitting right there. External disks is actually already on. So.
Oh, I turned my Bluetooth off. Does that matter?
No, that's not going to matter. But as long as you're online, that part actually does matter. Then let's go back to general and connected servers. There you go. And then just you can close that up. And then just do a new screen, hit Command N just to bring up a new window. And it should show up here, but yeah, go ahead and hit connect again. And then put in your, you need to do your, it's not for your computer. This is your Columbia ID.
Yeah, so the 3.7 thing again.
It's, yeah, whatever that is. And then that password. Don't worry, I'll just give you a thumb drive and you can put it on that. All right, so did anybody get anything on the server that they want to look at? No?
Is it at Cologne or is it just?
No, there's no, it's not at Colum. It's just your name. But you guys were on before.
Oh, actually. Got it, my bad.
Perfect, that's all right. And then just go ahead and connect to class projects and scroll down to Engelhard and drop your file on Engelhard. Did you get there too?
No, I'm here and I'm connected.
Okay, so close that guy up. In your Finder, just hit Command N. Or just new, no. Well, you can try that. So go to Go, but you may be already connected. Click on Connect to Server and go ahead and connect. And yep, you're already connected, so you can hit Cancel out of there. Just hit Command N here, just to bring up a new window in your Finder. Or up to File and do New. File, New Window, fine. Yeah, just click on that. It opens this guy up, scroll down, and it's not showing up here, so go up to your Finder again. Finder, Preferences, General, you are showing connected to server, so that part should actually be there. So again, close that up, Command N again, or go up to the File, New Finder window, and do Preferences one more time, Finder, Preferences, and come over to Sidebar.
Here?
Mm-hmm. And in Sidebar, you want to click on, go on. Actually, you're there, so go ahead and you should close this up. You're connected, but it's not actually showing up in here. So scroll down again to the bottom. I don't know why this isn't scrolling. Here, just take this thumb drive and put your file on the thumb drive. All right, did you drop your file?
Yeah, but you want the raw, unedited.
I want the raw, unedited file. Say what?
It's gonna be flat. Right?
That's okay. No, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay.
Do I have permission to, like, physical permission? Oh, I got it. Oh, no, I don't have permission to modify your.
Try putting it in the Dropbox.
Oh, yeah, you can't see it, but you can put stuff in it.
Okay.
So you guys are just dropping it on the Dropbox then, right?
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's perfect. All right, so I've got a Memphis 9.5 TIFF, which is not a raw file.
Oh. Oops. Oh, you know what? Because it's film and it was scanned, and whoever scanned it, that's how I got it.
Okay, no, that's fine, that's fine. So we'll actually take a look there to be a good place for us to start with. So I'm going to open it up into Photoshop. I'm going to do this work in Photoshop. Okay, so there is a number of problems with this. Whoever actually gave you this guy never assigned a profile to it, so I'm going to leave it as is, not color manage it. But that in itself is a problem, but that's okay.
So if all of my stuff, like a lot of the stuff that I've shot has been developed, people developed it, they scanned it, and this will probably happen all the time.
right?
So what do I do?
Well, so the question here is that this is not the scan. Where's the scan?
That's the scan file. What do you mean?
Well, this is the scan file, but didn't you shoot a color negative?
Yeah, I have the actual negative. Yeah.
And they converted it to you, for you, to a positive?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Well, it's like why would they give you negatives?
Because you want to do this conversion. They're telling you what your color should be. And now this is a baked file. You got to go in and try to fix this.
I mean, I did fix it, but that's like,
Oh, really? So when you scan it, you should scan the negative as well and then convert
As
it
a negative.
You only ever do 3F.
Only 3F. Always raw. As raw as it can get. Okay. Does anybody have a raw file? Because I think I can find one. Because for all you film people, oh my God, no, this is never where you want to go. So I'm going to show you how you want to go really quickly. Again, we need to get together and do the scanning thing. But if this is what's happening to you guys right now, this is hugely problematic.
A scanning day would be great.
Yeah, well, that's actually what I suggested to begin with. So I'm just going to show you really quickly, because again, guys, we've got 15 minutes, because I know a lot of people have got to go. So I'm simply going, I think I've got a file in here that is a true scan, the way you should be scanning your color negative stuff. And then we'll actually take a look at it. And I do have one right here. So this is what you should be getting, is something that looks like this.
Okay.
This is a 3F scan. So again, I'm sorry I don't know names, I'm forgetting names here or whatever, but somebody in your class totally knows, because the minute he said, is this a 3F? It is a raw scan. It's all the controls, adjustments, everything that exists inside of the Imicon software has been shut off. This is strictly, it's going through and it's not making any adjustments at all. It's simply reading the negative, and this is a negative that it actually reads. Does that sort of make sense? It's upside down, so I'm actually, first off, I'm just going to rotate this so it looks correct to us.
No.
Oh, wait, it was right side up. Never mind. Have pity on me. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I would basically color correct this part just to start out with. First thing is I'm going to duplicate this thing. I would never do this if that was the only copy of the scan that I had. So I'm duplicating it just by dragging the layer down onto this little icon down here. Does that make sense? Are you guys all comfortable with that part? And then I'm going to invert this thing, because this is a negative. I'm simply going to invert it. And there's a number of ways of inverting it. If you come up to the image menu right here and you come down, invert actually exists up here in adjustments. You could say invert right here, or it's simply Command I. So then I get an image that looks like this, which again, it's very flat, it's extremely washed out, but that's exactly the way this should be. Again, this is a raw scan, because that negative did not have a whole lot of dynamic range. That's sort of what we end up with in this process right here. Does that make sense to everyone? So for me now, and this may not be something that you guys are entirely comfortable with. How am I going to do this to show you to make this actually work? Okay, I know how I'm going to do this to make this part work. I think this will work. Yeah. I'm going to change this, because I'm going to use a different filtering system on this guy to actually, no, I'm not going to do that now. How am I going to do this? All right, let's just do. In most of your all's cases, in what little you actually do know in Photoshop, possibly know in Photoshop, there's two ways to adjust a file. If you come up to the image menu and you come down to adjustments right here, you can pick levels and curves right here. Is this typically what you guys would do? The problem with doing levels and curves right here is that this is a destructive move. This will actually do something to this image. So for instance, I'll show you. I'm just going to do a curve on here really quick, and I'm going to click on this and drag it way down to actually make it darker and say OK to that. And if I were to save this file right now, that change has been baked into this file. I can't undo that part. It's been baked into it. So I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that. Instead, I'm going to do a very similar thing but I'm going to use an adjustment layer to do that. Adjustment layers sit right down here at the bottom of your adjustment palette. So again, if you click on this, the little thing down here at the bottom that looks like a circle that's half black and half white, you can actually add a curve down here. And now what happens is it's added a layer on here. It looks exactly the same. It is an adjustment layer thing. It's sitting right here. However, this thing is not going to be applied. The effect, you'll see the effect. It'll be the same thing here. I can click and make the whole thing darker, but if I turn this on, the thing on the bottom hasn't been baked into that layer. Does that make sense, the difference here?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to turn this on like this. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to try to adjust the black point and the white point of each of my individual color channels. And so to do that, I'm going to sit, again, I'm in my properties palette right here. I'm going to pick my red channel, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to grab this black point slider. And if you hold down the Option key and you click on this black slider right here, sorry, I know it's the Option key.
Wait, so you should try trust Photoshop more than the Imacon?
Oh, totally.
You can also do all of what you're doing in Lightroom, right? Or no?
Yes, yes, you can. You can do all this in Lightroom. So I'm going to show you basically how I would approach this. See where the histogram actually is sitting right down here, where this whole thing sort of starts? Again, let me go into my red channel right here. See where this little bump starts in my histogram right here? That's telling me I have no real red information between this space right here and this space up here. So I'm going to click on this point and start to drag it over, and I'm trying to get close to the point where information actually starts on my image. Does that make sense what's going on here? So this is to actually try to set my black point in this part right here. Then I'm going to do the same thing with my white point. My white point, I'm actually going to make this thing a little bit larger so you guys can see this.
Yeah. You would want to do this in Photoshop and like this and dust deleting first before Lightroom, or would you bring the raw files into Lightroom?
You could do the raw files in Lightroom and do this exact same thing. Yes. Again, more native. Okay, so I'm going to click on the top and I'm going to pull this white point back till, so basically what I've said is where does the red point for the highlights begin and where do the shadows for this red begin? And so that's just what I've set this red one to be. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah.
Then I'm going to go to my green channel and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to crank this up to this point right here and pull this part back here so that it's getting really close to where that detail starts. And then the final thing is I'm going to go to my blue channel and do the exact same thing again. And this to me would actually be the beginning of my color correction on this part right here. Does this sort of make sense where we're at? Now for me, this actually needs considerably more work to be done on it. So to do that work, again, this is simply the way that I would work on this. I need to merge all of this together into one layer that I can control. Because this is, you can see, it's a reasonably good color correction on this. It's still a little bit on the flat side, but it's a long way from this. And I did it in 10 seconds, right? So again, I'm going to go back to this part right here. To make a merged stamp version, to put all of this into one layer that I can then control, I'm going to hold down the Command, Option, Shift, and hit the letter E. And you'll see it has now made a layer up here that is, again, all the stuff that was down below it. So again, that dialog shortcut is Command, Option, Shift, and the letter E. Then I'm going to change this into a smart object. You don't Command,
Shift.
Option, Shift, E. Okay, so then to fix the rest of this part, again, I'm going to turn this into a smart object. Basically, smart objects would allow, you can see, if you come up to filter, you'll see this thing, convert for smart filters. The only reason I want to convert this for a smart filter is I want to be able to adjust my filter. And I'll show you what this means. If I don't convert this, I can still come up to filter and I can come down to camera raw filter, and this is what I would do. This brings me into a workspace that is exactly like Camera Raw or Lightroom. And I can use all of those controls in here. So again, I can set white balance in here. So if I come over to my white balance tool, I can click on something that should be neutral. I feel like in many ways that actually made things a little bit too light, so I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that. I'm going to stick with the color that I've actually got. I'll see what a white balance over there does. That one's actually a little bit better, but I still sort of like the way things are going here a little bit more. One of the things that very few people ever do in this is just try out the auto control on this. So I'm going to simply hit auto and see what Photoshop thinks that I can do. And you can see that it's actually brought in a little bit more contrast in this. It's reset a couple of other things. But this is sort of where I'm beginning to go in this whole part here. Does this sort of make sense what's going on? So then let's say I also want to add some clarity to this, because clarity is a mid-tone contrast slider. So now I'm beginning to get the image that I actually want to get. Does this sort of make sense? If I say OK to this right now, it bakes it into that layer. I cannot go back and change anything. This has now been baked in. Does that make sense? Instead, I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that. I'm going to change this to a smart object first. Up to Filter, down to Convert for Smart Filters. And then I'm going to do that exact same thing again. It's now a smart object. That's why it's got this weird little icon right here. Up to Filter, down to Camera Raw Filter. It takes me right back into Camera Raw again. Again, I'm going to hit Auto to actually do that part of it. I'm going to take my Clarity slider and I'm going to bump it up a little bit more again, just like I did. This now looks exactly like what I just did, and I'm going to say OK to that. But instead of this baking that into this layer, it has now created this filter down here that is impacting this. I can turn this guy off and it goes back to the flat version, or I can turn it on again and it shows me the tricked out version of it. But most importantly, I can double click on this and go right back into the filter and continue to modify it. All of those adjustments are in here, but they're never baked into that file. I can adjust this forever. So let's say I really want to pump a little overall contrast in here. I can continue to make those changes and those adjustments. I know. You're good. You're so welcome.
Love to do another one.
Does this make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
Are there questions about this? So this would be the way that I would go after a raw scan in this part. So I'm going to say OK to that. We've got 4 minutes to go that we can take a look at one other file. Does anybody have a file that they dropped in the server that they really want to look at?
But it has to be like a negative?
It doesn't have to be a negative. It can just be anything. I just don't want a file that you've processed the shit out of that we have no hope of actually fixing.
Mine's pretty processed.
Yours is pretty processed. We can take a look at it. Is it layered?
No.
Okay, so it's just a baked file.
It's a big tip.
Can I give you a tip?
Yeah. Do you have one that's on? Do you still have that thumb drive?
Yeah.
Okay, put it on the thumb drive. Give me the thumb drive and we'll take a look at that guy really quick. I'm happy to get together with you guys and look at your stuff, but we might as well start at the beginning. Once you've done a whole bunch of processing and if it's all baked in, then we're fighting a losing battle already. What we need to do is we need to start with as little as you possibly could have done to it, preferably either the raw scan or the raw digital file, either one. Make sense?
Oh, you mean the raw positive?
Whatever it is that where you start.
Okay.
Who gives you, when you get something, what do you get? What do you start with?
Okay.
That's what we need to start with. Okay. Is it this guy right here? Okay. Okay, so what is this I'm actually looking at?
It's a view from buildings and with the 35 millimeter, and
Okay.
I use a red filter to add density.
Exactly, which is all fine. So again, and it's a black and white negative that's actually been scanned?
Mhm.
Okay, So again, the first thing I would do in here is make a copy of this guy, because no matter what I do, if I screw something up in here, I don't want to screw up your original. And then I would invert this guy. I know the keyboard shortcuts to actually do that. And this is one of the problems that you guys have with this initial scanning process that you've got going right here, is that all of this information is merely gone in this because your scan is not flat enough. This is what your scan's looking like. This is buried. All of that information up in there is buried. It probably exists in your negative, but when you scan, how did you get this scan of your negative? I'm sorry?
What do you mean? Like, I have a scanner in the house and I scan.
And you scan this with a scanner in your house, right?
With a scanner.
Yeah, and you use the software so like an Epson scanner or a Nikon scanner, it's one of those guys, right? That software processed this negative. And this detail that's down in here is simply gone. I can't recover that. There's a good chance it exists in your negative. And if we could shut off all of the scanning stuff that was applied to this, there's a chance that I could get this sky to be insanely beautiful. But right now, this is the best that we're going to get going for here. So there's a number of things that we can actually try to fix in this part. So we will, again, I'm going to turn this into a smart object. We'll see what it looks like for what basically Photoshop thinks that we can do on this guy. We'll see how this works, but there's a good chance, again, I think the sky is pretty much gone is what I'm trying to say to you. Command-I is the shortcut. So I'm going to run camera raw filter on this guy. We'll see what auto does in here. And again, you can see it can't really recover anything in this. So for me, though, I can actually go after and look at this. So I'm reading the 80s in here. I'm reading other 81s up in here. I'm going to try a different method of this really quickly just to sort of see how this part goes. I am going to go after, again, I'm going to add a curve on this. I'll see you. Sure. I'm going to add a curve to this guy. When you add curves on this, you actually have an auto button right here, but this auto button is usually, by default, this is not set up correctly. So you have options for this auto button. To change this, if you come up to this flyout menu and you come down to auto options, you can actually see how it affects different things in here depending on what we actually set up to do on this guy right here. And you can see in this is actually only giving me one set of auto options here because this is a grayscale image. So you've also scanned this in grayscale. Again, did you shoot this on color negative film or black and white film? So the grayscale is sort of okay in here, but what you'll find that happens, because for you said you actually used a red filter on this. I'm not seeing that at all because if you used a red filter on a blue sky, that sky should be almost black. Yeah, you can actually make that happen. If you start shooting with color negative and leverage that information, you can do your filtering after the fact. You don't need to do it before the fact. Does that sort of make sense? So at any rate, but you can see at least right now, I've gotten the buildings back to being some sort of decent work on this. This is pretty much all blocked up, but it was never in there to begin with. I can never really dig that part out. So it's just your scan has been so processed here. This is as good as this is going to get. And it's still not horrible, but it's not. It doesn't sound to me like this is what you wanted at all.
No, not at all.
Okay, so
Meaning that I have to rescan the film.
yes.
All that information from a different scan.
I think that you'd be surprised what information is actually in your negative that we don't have in your scan.
Can we scan 4x5? Oh, well, in this case, 35mm, but can we scan 4x5?
Yes. Yes. That's as high. They don't go any higher. They do 4x5. They don't do anything bigger than that. Okay. So the last thing that I can sort of show you guys about this really quickly, just to give you some idea of what I'm talking about why you might, instead of shooting in black and white, why you might want to shoot in color and still do your scanning part, is exactly what I was just talking to you about. So I'm going to show you one thing, and then we all got to get out of here. If you guys need to go, obviously other people have already left, but for those of you who've stuck it out to the bitter end, I'll actually show you, I think it's here. A number of them.
What are the names?
So the first Photoshop that the foundation people get into is, hang on one second, let me find this just to get this up really quick, would be Photo Practice 3. The thing right after that that would follow that would be Advanced Compositing and Retouching.
Are you teaching those classes?
I don't teach the first one, but I teach the second one. Sorry guys, I know this image is in here. Oh, fuck, it's not that. Here it is. Okay, so this is an image that starts out in color like this, and I am simply going to autocorrect it to get the tonal part right here. So this looks like more the typical image that you would typically see, right? And I'm going to go ahead and open this as a smart object again in here. I'm going to double click on this to get it as big as I can actually get it. Then I am going to convert this to black and white, but again, I'm leveraging the color that exists here already. So again, to change this to black and white, I'm going to add a black and white adjustment layer to this. It turns everything to black and white. However, you can see that it's taken different areas of this image and controlling them, converting it to different areas of gray. But you can modify this. So I'm going to use the targeting adjustment tool, and what I'm going to do is come over here and I'm going to click on this area. Photoshop knows that this is blue. So watch what happens. I'm going to click on this and start to drag it. You'll notice that the slider that's moving down in here is only the blue one. I can click and drag that down, and I just made an Ansel Adams photograph. I can click in the sky roughing down here, whatever, and bring this part down as well. I can actually take some of the tree right here and target it, or better yet, the target area right over here, and I can actually open this up. So I can do multiple filterings in here based on color to control my black and white. You cannot do that with a black and white negative. So pick your poison. Does that make sense, though, what I just showed you? Because this, again, is exactly what you're doing with the filtering. You're saying, I want to cut out that blue light so that your negative ends up being extremely thin in that area, and therefore, when you go back and print it in, it hits the paper really hard, and your sky becomes black. And it's exactly what Ansel Adams did forever. Yeah. So anyway, that's it, guys. I feel like we should have been able to get more. Are we okay with this? Again, this is, say what?
Do we have to request that?
No, I think Kelly's already planning on a scanning one, which we should talk about in terms of doing that, because I think you guys could come maybe better prepared for that. But in that sense, we would actually take your negatives, meet in the Imicon scanning room, and deal with scanning and then processing scanning like this after the fact. So I think she wants to do that part, but anything else that you want to do, I know what they're trying to do, at least this is my understanding, is that the chair is trying to get me more involved with the graduate program for reasons exactly like you guys showing up today to actually get a jump on this part. So just talk to her about it,
Okay.
and we'll work something out.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll see you guys soon.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Oh, and then the profile.
Oh,